this is the second orchid care video that I'm making, and this video is how to care for your orchids after they bloomed or after you've had them for a few years. Now this orchid right here I have had for maybe 2 or 3 years, and it is definitely overgrown its pot. You can see the roots are growing out of the pot, and actually I've removed the pot just for now so I could clean it to make this video, but you can see that it's starting to work its way out. And orchids do that over time. Is they what they do is they start to grow. The roots start growing out of the top of the leaves at the top here, and the roots just continue to grow upwards. So what you need to do is remove your orchid from the pot, and it actually was originally in this pot before I just cleaned it for this video. And what you need to do is, you remove it from the pot, and I'm just going to use this cardboard box to catch it. Just remove all of the potting medium from the roots. I'll take this off the flowers as well, so I don't ruin the flowers. Now you should really do this when the flowers are all finished, but this orchid doesn't seem to want to stop blooming, so I'm going to do it while it is still in bloom, just because I like the flowers. And don't be afraid to get in there in the roots and just pull them apart. So now you can see we've got all the potting medium out of the roots. There's actually 2 potting mediums people generally use when they are potting up orchids, and one is the bark, which I'm using right now, and another one is the sphagnum moss. I actually prefer to use the sphagnum moss because it holds the moisture a lot better, and I find my orchids grow a lot better in the sphagnum moss. But all I have today to repot this with is the bark medium, so that's what I'm going to use. So now that all the old potting medium is off, what you want to do is get rid of all the old roots. So go through your orchid and find out which roots are healthy and which roots are not, and just give them a cut off. You can generally tell the bad roots on your orchid because they're all shriveled up and they've got nothing to them really. They're just dry. The ones that are good are the ones that are squishy and they've got some actual density to them. So just snip off all the little bits of the dried ones here. And don't be afraid to do this with your orchid. It won't hurt it. And actually when you cut them back like this, it actually encourages new growth for the next year. So it's all the more better reason to cut the roots off your orchid. Or not cut all the roots off, but give your roots a trim. Plus, the reason you do this too every couple of years is you don't want the old roots to be rotting too long inside the potting medium because it can cause diseases and everything. Okay, so now that that's done, what I'm going to do is put the orchid back in the same pot that I had it in before. A lot of the time you don't need to repot the orchid in a bigger pot. The orchids actually, or the Phalanopsis orchid anyways, likes to be a little bit pot bound. So when you're doing this, generally you can use the same pot that you bought it in. Just make sure when you pull it out, give the pot a good wash with some like a mild bleach solution just to kill all the germs and everything. Put your orchid back in, and then use a potting mix that you prefer. I'm going to use the bark because that's all I have. When you're using the bark, try to soak it for 24 hours before you usually repot your orchids. It helps to add a little bit more moisture and get it in there before before you're done potting it up. And when you're adding the bark to it, make sure you get the bark into all the little crevices inside where all the roots are. I know it's very difficult and it's actually a bit of a messy job, but it's worth it when it's done because it will make for a very happy orchid. Okay, so now that I'm done repotting this orchid, a good test to find out whether you've done it properly or not is to grab the leaves on the sides of the orchid and lift the orchid up. And if the pot doesn't come off when you lift it up, then you've done it properly. If the pot comes off, then you need to pack it a little tighter. That way a nicely packed orchid pot will keep your orchid very happy. Now, after repotting your orchid, generally they don't have blooms on them, but you usually repot your orchid after the orchid is bloomed. But I had a hard time finding one that wasn't blooming because for some reason my orchids won't stop blooming right now. After you've repotted your orchid, you want to put your orchid in a slightly dark room for a couple of weeks to let it work on some growth. You want to put it in a dark room for a couple of weeks to let it work on some growth on the leaves, and I would say about 3 to 4 weeks to 6 weeks later, take it out of that dark room when you start noticing some new growth either on the leaves or some roots growing out from the bottom of the leaf section here. I would bring it back into the light, and I would start using a liquid fertilizer, especially a liquid fertilizer that helps you grow that's especially formulated for leaf growth. And I would continue using that through the summer. Probably after repotting an orchid, I would probably fertilize weekly, a week solution weekly. So what you would normally use, I would use half to a third of, but I would do it every week just to ensure good growth, so in the fall you will have nice orchid blooms again.